You're watching Next Pitch, the student athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Hi, my name's Anthony Leveritz, host of the Next Pitch podcast. And on behalf of my Emmy Award-winning producer, Jason Cardona, we are thrilled to bring you Daron Sutton today. What an amazing guy. He is currently the vice president of content for Perfect Game and the executive producer of Perfect Game TV. Formerly a play-by-play announcer for Major League Baseball and currently doing basketball, soccer, volleyball for NCAA sports. He's also the son of Hall of Famer Don Sutton. And we just had an amazing conversation about his journey through growing up in a Major League Baseball clubhouse, dugout, airplane rides, all the way through what he's doing now. And what a class guy, and a ton of valuable information for both players, parents, and coaches in this episode. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And without further ado, here's Daron. Daron Sutton, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I can't tell you how grateful we are for you to take time out of your day, out of your life, to come have a conversation with us.
Yeah, fun subjects. I was really excited when I heard I was at least extended the invitation. Once I got my text set and we're talking now, I'm excited to shoot the breeze. I've been looking forward to this for a bit.
We've had, obviously you played growing up, but you're our first broadcaster on the show. And I'm excited to get your perspective from watching it from the outside. Well, not the outside, but from a different lens as you watch the game and talk through some of that as well as we go. But let's start back at the beginning. Obviously, we can't have a conversation with you without talking about your early life, being the son of Don Sutton, being raised in the clubhouse. I read some of that about going to the park with your dad every day. What was that like growing up, getting the opportunity to be around that environment, those kinds of players, and seeing that? How'd that rub off on you as a young guy?
I think you gain perspective as you age in anything in life, right? I mean, if you're raised by educators, you don't really appreciate it until you're older. The value of studying, the value of making good decisions that many educators pass along, because I deal with so many kids of educators. I think it's the same thing with sports. As I grew older and realized that, again, I was around the very best in the world at what they did, albeit a lot of them childlike in the way they acted with one another. They were. And I think what my father did so well was, if I handled my business as a son, as a brother, as a student, okay around the house, if the garbage was put out, if I didn't backtalk my mom at 15 years old. I mean, my dad's career was crazy long. You see a lot of athletes like Freddie Freeman aging now in the major leagues, and his most famous son, Charlie, who's still very, very young. And then he has obviously younger children. Here's an older player who knows how much longer he will play. My father played from 3 years before I was born in the major leagues until I was a freshman in college. So understand that.
Crazy.
I had a dad that was a major league player that actually laid down rules as a dad that said, hey, you can come to the park with me if you work with the clubhouse staff and figure out what they need help to do. And B, by the time I was 15, if you have your own job, because I'm not putting gas in your car and I'm not buying you a car. So I had this unique upbringing of a dad who grew up with nothing at all. I mean, hardworking, blue collar, amazing parents, and then had the career that he had where, in early 80s, he was making $800,000, which sounded like, my goodness, it was crazy. But it was put away. It was saved. We paid our bills. We had nicer things. We didn't have to ever be concerned. But my father had the same sensibilities as a dad that a blue collar dad had. And so I think I was lucky. Now, the baseball part, the exclusive part, the learning how to throw a forkball from Raleigh fingers, because that's the pitch that he threw. Being a bat boy in the 70s with the Dodgers, in the 80s when the Brewers went to the World Series, remembering looking around Busch Stadium when the Cardinals beat the Brewers in the World Series, and I was present. I was on the bench. I was on the bus. I was on the plane going back to Milwaukee when they sadly lost. So I did get it. I mean, I think I always was a little bit of a journalist at heart. even though I played kind of poorly in the professional ranks. But it was an incredible experience. And as I've gotten older, and I mean now much older, into my mid 50s, and since my dad has passed, and so much of my dad has come alive to me through others, I think I appreciate it more every single day. I never took it for granted because my dad wouldn't let me, and hard work was part of our home too.
So when did you decide you wanted to play? Right, you weren't just at the clubhouse every day. You had to play. Did you grow up playing multiple sports? We talk a lot about being a multi-sport athlete on the show, and kind of the importance of that as a young person for lots of reasons. When did you start getting involved in athletics yourself and working on your own game?
I played like everyone, I think, who's a Gen Xer. I played a lot. And if you weren't playing organized, you were playing. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen anymore. I wish it did happen more, but it was always playing. But very young, and I ask athletes these questions. I rarely talk about this, but very young. It was football before it was tackle. It was flag. It was basketball. I played varsity basketball in high school for a couple of years. Ran track when I was very young, and then I got tall and uncoordinated and non-athletic, and tried to work my way through that. But I think a lot of baseball was because I loved the sport. But what I learned as I got older, what I loved about the sport as much as the playing and the competing were the people and the relationships and the stories behind sports that drove me to it. So much so that I stopped playing varsity basketball. I went to a smaller school in Southern California, so you could make varsity pretty early if you were tall. But I stopped playing my junior and senior year because I was more drawn to doing the PA. I was pulled to a microphone. I wanted to be able to grab the attention of the 40 people that were there, whatever it was for a high school game. But I did. I quit playing, did the PA. So there were dueling interests right away. I think the reason I chased playing, because I knew it might help pay for my college, which it did. And number two, I didn't have a better option at that time. Like, why wouldn't I play? This is what my father's done. This is all I've known. But so looking back upon it, I played everything all the time. And if not, I made it up outside with my friends, and then got serious about baseball. I really didn't grow up and get serious about my work in it, honestly, until I signed. And I only signed because I was a legacy. But through college, I had a coach that made us all grow up too. I went to Irvine for 1 year, but I wasn't ready for UC system schooling. I was not a devoted student like I should have been. I did grow up after that, but I went to a small school in the Deep South that's now a Division II school, Auburn University in Montgomery, so the second campus. Best thing I ever could have done. Blue-collar coach. I'm a SoCal kid in the Deep South. There were no rules. He could discipline as he wanted, and it was good for me. And so, yeah, but I played everything. I played everything young. Focused on into baseball probably my junior year of high school, where it was baseball only. And I'd play different than there was no travel ball, but I'd play Angels scout team. So I'd play a fall season in the fall, and then I'd play, baseball in the spring.
Read somewhere that you said you knew you weren't what a big leaguer looked like, and you knew it wasn't you. Was that hard? Was that a hard thing for you to handle? Because obviously sports ends at different times for every person, but it ends, even your dad, he plays for 22 years in the bigs. It's going to end at some point in time. When that ended for you, was that something that was difficult, or were you ready for that next phase of your life?
Oh, what a great question. It was so easy. I got my college degree in 92. We're going that far back, but after getting my college degree and then signing and playing in the Angels organization, I came back to Atlanta, Georgia, where I made home as a young 20-something, and immediately was able to at least jump into an internship, entry-level part-time job at CNN. Took what I had done. I had broadcasted in the summertime when I was playing summertime baseball in college, the equivalent of the Cape Cod League. I was playing in Kansas, just a tier below, but I would broadcast every 4 days and then pitch the fifth, which was a dream. It was amazing to be able to do that. So I had some experience, and I got my degree at this small school in communication. So I nooched my way into getting a part-time job, schlep around CNN. So now I got released by the Angels and got signed by the Braves out of a kind of a tryout camp relational situation, went to spring training, and I left behind CNN, and they bid me well, and went down there, and again had a very good spring. I think what made it so easy is I had the very best. I reached my total peak in 1993 in Brave spring training, but I looked around the locker room and there were guys that were named Javi Lopez and Ryan Klesko and the landing place for Chipper Jones. And again, I was never to be those guys, but even guys in the Braves organization at that time, it was just what it was. They were on this run of being amazing in 93 on. And so for me, then getting sent to extended spring, great. I was still employed by the Braves, but looking around with a college degree and already with something kind of bubbling in the communications world, I didn't know what it would turn out to be. And pitching with a bunch of young 17 and 18-year-olds, talented Dominican athletes who were there to grow up in extended spring. Well, I already had my degree. I was already like a dad figure to these kids. And then injured major leaguers that were stopping by for 3 or 4 days, in Braves or Mets camps, and hitting Preston Wilson with a pitch, and, them wanting to kill me because he was their number one prospect. All these things led me to go actually into the office of Bobby Dews, who had a long coaching career with the Braves, and say, Bobby, I think I'm good. I really appreciate it. And he said, hey, man, we were going to send you to single A, double A, just as a bottom of the roster guy. You're a grown up. You've handled this well. We even thought about you for coaching for next year. What precipitated that call was the night before I reached out to the folks with Turner and CNN and say, hey, listen, I'm down here. I'm pitching in the minor leagues. Is there anything you have? Do you have any job? I showed you what I could do. Entry level, whatever. They said, we're actually launching these new before the internet. So sorry, all you younger people. We're launching all these place-based networks in airports. We want CNN in the airports. We want CNN at gas stations, CNN at grocery stores. We need someone to at least help with sports, who doesn't chase the big CNN name. Is fine being in a back closet at CNN, and we'll give you 19 grand a year and you got a full-time job. And I said, I'll be home in 2 days. So it was easy, man. It was really easy. I was blessed to have something to jump into, but it was the easiest thing I've ever done. And it was really cool that I had done the best I had ever done as a player, and realized I was nowhere close to these guys that were going off to play, the higher levels of pro ball.
That's awesome. And I think it's such an important thing for young people. I've talked to my son about this, is that you don't have to necessarily be a professional athlete or have professional athletics be your career and still be involved in sports in some way. If you love the game, if you have a passion for the game, you can find your own niche. There's so many different ways to be involved in athletics, from coaching to broadcasting to sports marketing to sports information, sports science. There's just so many different avenues to stay involved and engage and have an impact on sports. When you got into broadcasting and you've had this amazing career, lots of change in your career, how has the kind of the evolving landscape of broadcasting, the evolving landscape of sports, how did your background and what you learned from being involved in athletics help you as you transition from job to job, position to position, organization to organization, and kind of starting over each time you had to make that move?
Well, look, I haven't always professionally seen eye to eye with my leaders. I mean, it's documented. I wasn't the right fit after 5.5 years with the Diamondbacks, and they paid me not to work there. The great line in Moneyball, when Brad Pitt is talking to the actor playing David Justice, and he's like, you're paying me this much. And he reminds him, no, the Yankees are paying you this much not to play for you. I was that guy with the Diamondbacks. I got paid for 4.5 years to not broadcast. So that's kind of a lighter way to answer your question. To get into the one thing I learned is this, and this is so evident and clear to me. Like it always plays. You're not always going to see eye to eye with those making the decisions. Ultimately, if they're investing their money, it's their right to make the decisions. And I so respect that. Obviously, be subordinate, understand what they're asking, do the best you can. You still might not be, especially in the world of talent. It's like a player or an athlete, a broadcaster or a host. In the world of talent, it's very different than being just a good accountant. My daughter's an accountant, and she just has to really check boxes and do a good job and make sure her hours are productive. Being talented is very, very different. And you have to be ready for subjective opinions everywhere you turn, including at times your bosses. And so for me, the one thing I've learned that I will always take with me, and I've loved every place I've been, is, man, playing sports helped me be a good teammate. And
Mm.
when you're a broadcaster, when you're doing radio and you have an engineer and a color analyst, when you're doing live television and you have a producer, director, 5 or 6 camera ops, a tape op, a graphics producer, a graphic builder, someone who's making sure the truck works, an engineer, you have all these people working together. If you're not a good teammate, then the show's not going to be good. If you don't understand that all those people I just mentioned and not you are the most important thing, you're not going to have a good show. So I'm always filled with warmth inside when shows I've worked on, whether it be with the Pac-12 network, whether it be with the Diamondbacks, whether it be Fox Sports, and even our work now with Perfect Game, building our own, smaller network around amateur baseball. Man, when everyone looks back and with joy comes up and wants to say hello, we loved working with you. You got the truck. Well, of course I got the truck. I was a tape editor myself when there was actual tape, when it wasn't digital. And of course I understood it. I did all those jobs along the way before I became someone who got to be more talent, for lack of better words. And I think the other thing is being a jack of all trades, being able to lean into other things. Be a good teammate, number one, from playing sports, man, so important. And then being versatile, being able to, it's like when you warm up in the pen and your slider's just not there, how are you going to get outs that day? Well, I think it's the same way professionally, for me anyway. It doesn't have to serve everyone, but for me, to transition out of a major league booth and to have the skills to be able to produce, to do good interviews, to understand how to create content. There's a lot that sat in that chair and did so very, very well for many, many years, who probably couldn't step out or they'd be jarred by it. I never was. And even when I was doing major league games and had the highest peak job in the world's eyes or in baseball's eyes, I was doing college hoops in the wintertime on smaller packages like Wisconsin, Milwaukee, because I love the art of calling sports. And so I think the be versatile thing is a second tier, but playing sports taught me how to be a good teammate. And man, that has helped me stay employed, because people always remember how you handle them, respect them, and treat them. And that's helped me stay employed. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
It's such an important point. We talk about this a lot, of all the different things that sports, very few people get to make money playing the sport that they play growing up. It's a really, really rare bird that gets to go all the way from being a youth sports athlete to playing in the majors, playing in the NBA, playing in the NFL, whatever sport they're going to play. But the lessons that you can learn as a 13, 14-year-old about how having commitment, as you talked about, being a teammate, and what does that mean? Making sure that you know how to rely on the person next to you and that they can rely on you, treating people the right way, making sure that you learn how to work hard, learn how to fail, make a mistake, stand back up, go do it again, knowing you might fail again, and then go through a process of trying not to fail again. Those are such important things that young people need to learn from sports, and have kind of gotten away from that in this youth and sports environment that we're currently in.
Yeah, and we don't have to. I mean, we have a little bit, and there are certain factions of it that have, or certain lanes. And if it's an LA freeway, there's some of the lanes have gotten away from it, but not all of them.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. I have this unique job with this. This is the second tier setup I have, but I have this amazing setup where, on Sirius XM, once a week, I'm interviewing 3 young athletes. On a college baseball show, I'm interviewing 2 young athletes. On a college softball show, I'm interviewing 2 young athletes. I'm in athletes' homes when their draft days come around and they get drafted, shooting documentaries. I'm around tons of kids, and each day, each time, not every single interview, don't get me wrong, or every single conversation, but I'll go out this door and walk down the hall to my wife's office, and I will say clearly, the world's going to be okay.
Yeah.
There are good people out there. There are good kids out there. Surely all these kids I talk to are not going to be Major League All-Stars, but you know what? They're off to a good start. The thing about values, faith is starting to bubble up in our world again, to where, this younger generation, they have grown. At 55, when I played sports, I would not have been as understanding and as empathetic in the 70s and 80s as these young athletes are when I was their age. I just wouldn't have been. I'm glad I've grown as a 55-year-old man, but they are. And it's because of all they've been through and all they've seen. They're much more understanding to those that may not be like them or look like them. They're much more empathetic. But in return, here's what the ones with confidence that put in the work, that have good parents, you know what they're confident doing? Here's who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share the values that matter to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to hide them under a rock, and I'm not going to put them behind a bushel. I'm going to talk about my faith. I'm going to talk about my values. I'm going to talk about my parents. I'm going to talk about my single mom who's a kick butt woman.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you. We have, in certain lanes of that wide freeway, lost our way, but not in all of them.
I agree with you. I say this all the time. I have a 14-year-old son who's right in the middle of the mix of it right now in sports. And there are so many good things that are a part of his life on a daily basis. But watching what I watched, and I lived in the basketball world for most of my professional life,
Sure.
watching club basketball. And if done correctly, as you just talked about, there is an opportunity for sport to teach so many quality things. And these kids, I was talking to Trevor Hoffman the other day, and he brought up the same thing you just brought up, was compassion and empathy being taught to young people through sports. And he's seeing that on a regular basis. If done correctly, it's an amazing environment for young people out there. And what we want to make sure that we get the message to the people that are teaching these people, coaching these people, is what a responsibility that is. Because if you do it the way you just discussed, you have an opportunity for a huge impact with these kids. If done incorrectly, you can see the opposite of that.
Well, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. And I guess with people like you and in some cases what we're doing, you know, more and more conversations about that thing, more and more conversations about that thing, meaning that responsibility to be more specific. And hopefully, because more people are talking, and because it's a whatever $1 billion, whatever the number is, industry, youth sports, travel sports, more and more people are leaning in, more and more people are jumping, and I get a kick out of it. I was far from the first, not even close, but I've been living in this space, interviewing these young athletes since about 14 now. So I laugh now because the room's a lot larger. A lot of people. There are people that have come from professional sports, like, hey, let me set up shop over here, because there's a lot of eyeballs and a lot of people paying attention. And my thoughts are joyfully welcome. Welcome to the space. It's a unique space. It'll keep you young. It'll keep you current. And I think there's things, as we've talked about, that you and I can do to assist. I'm a platform provider, but I'm unafraid to provide a platform that these athletes know, come as you are. And come in 2020, in June of 2020, I mean, we had more young, talented Black athletes on our space talking about what their lives look like in June of 2020. Not now, in June, in the heart of it. And we opened those doors and loved every moment of it. As I've talked about, Charlie Buckles, who plays at Florida State and who's going to have a wonderful career, has been tabbed as a young, talented Jewish athlete who is really stepping up and being supported on campuses with anti-Semitism as one of his colleagues. By the way, he's also going to play his way to the big leagues. Christianity, Catholicism, your parents, different situations. So if handled correctly, you're right. And for me, I try and keep where I'm at in my life, on the lower tier, but I'll talk about it with these athletes publicly. But I also want them to know that it's a place where they can come talk. And I think more and more parents hearing that, I hope more and more, because look, the old guy with the gray hair with the glasses, the kids are going to, a lot of my content is consumed as much or more so by parents than it is by the athletes themselves. Now, the athletes are thrilled to get the call to have the senior dean. It's like if Vin Scully wanted to interview you as a major leaguer. They're excited at PG. This guy's been here since I was 3. He's at PG. He's been here forever. They get excited to come on. They're going to watch TikTok. They're going to watch Instagram. I get that. I'm not disconnected, but I am excited that parents are watching what we're talking about. And there's 2 reasons, I'll be honest, because parents pay the bills.
That's right.
And I want to make sure I connect with them as someone who represents my business. That's my job. Right. They pay me to do that. But there's also a lot of lessons to learn. And I think, many of them who may be bumbling in that lane where they shouldn't be, even if 1 or 2 of them get it figured out and impact, impact the athletes in a positive way, then maybe we have done something, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's not easy. I just interviewed. I've interviewed a whole bunch of people, but I just brought my 14-year-old son on. He's not 14. He told me he's almost 15 year old son on the show because he's in the thick of it. He's in the middle of it, and we're trying to reach parents and kids. And I thought interviewing him would be super fun, and it was. But he pointed out all the mistakes that I made as a parent, as a coach on the show. And I have a basic drive to really try to do this right with him. I still get it wrong. And so being able to have an impact on those parents and provide a platform, knowing that it's a very difficult thing to raise young people through this entire crazy environment, that it is an important responsibility.
Yeah, and we don't know it all. I mean, that's the
No.
thing. And I always ask young athletes or athletes that have been through it, or my co-hosts. I host shows weekly with Hunter Pence and Sierra Romero and athletes that were parented well. I'll always bring up to coaches and to young athletes, advice for parents. What do you have? Listen to what these athletes say. And gosh, I learned so much in my craft all the time. And even as a parent, my daughters are grown. They're out in the real world with jobs and paying and living their own way and starting their lives. And, but I still learn. I still try and learn. And I think that's the best part, having, the overabundance of content, and there certainly is.
Yeah.
But hopefully if people mine through it, there's some good things that they can learn to coach young athletes. Because you're right. I'll get done with these conversations. And the first thing I won't think is, especially if they're above 16, I'll say this. The first thing I won't think is that's a major leaguer, because a lot of them I haven't seen them play in depth. The first thing I will think is that's a hireable human being.
Yes.
That's a good husband in the making.
Yeah.
That's a good friend in the making.
Yes.
There's a young man at our last weekend, Keon Johnson, who we gave an award to, who's, top 20 player in the United States in the class of 26 baseball, that we've known for a long time. And he received an award, single mom battling cancer. He's kept the way through. He's at a Vanderbilt commit. And I actually thought to myself, what's your thought? Like, I don't even think about Keon Johnson playing third base or shortstop in the big leagues. Probably will. I think about what I just thought of. Man, what a good husband that guy's going to be.
Yeah.
What a great hire he's going to be, no matter what he does. It doesn't matter what he does. He may say, I'm not going to college. I'm just going to get into the working world and start working on air conditioning. You know what? He's going to kick butt working for your company.
That's right.
So you're exactly right. It's great that you do this, because I think the tiniest of tiniest of tiniest become the major leaguers, and then go even tinier than that.
Yep.
That's who gets it. The rest are just out there in the world, hopefully making lives better as good employees, good husbands, good wives.
That's right. I couldn't. Amen. How about that? So let's talk some baseball. So obviously baseball is having a wonderful renaissance here, getting kind of way more eyeballs back on the game. What do you think of the rule changes? Having grown up in the sport, what do you think about the rule changes? The shifts, bigger bases, the pitch clock. What do you think? Two-part question. What do you think of them and how the impact has been? And then second, do you think technology is going to come into the game even more so on like strike zone technology and that kind of stuff? And what kind of impact would that have? A big question, but I think it's important.
I'll give a little context. When I was the voice of the Diamondbacks, that ended a long time ago, but back in 2012, I was the guy who had the attitude, let me know when they get here. I don't care about prospects. And everything needs, rookies need to be seen and not heard, and don't wear colorful uniforms and spikes and do that thing, fall in the line. Man, I couldn't be more different now. I've spent time around the future of the game, and I've seen, I've called the All-American Classic games for Bryce Harper and Francisco Lindor and Chris Bryant. Then I've gotten to know intimately and done features and documentaries with the Corbin Carrolls and the Bobby Witts and the Hunter Greens. So I've grown up with these players. I've known them as kids and watched them become men. I'm all in with the rule changes, every single one of them. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't mind seeing what they did at the All-Star game after 12 innings of play in a regular season game every single time. Just do it. I mean, think about it. People would stay if they thought that might happen. I love technology and its place in the game. The only part of the human element I would love to hang on to is when the automated strike zone comes in. Don't take the home plate umpire out. Let's let the relationship between the catcher and the umpire work. Let's let the human element come into play at that point. And so you get whatever it's determined, 2, 3, 4 appeals per game, tap on the helmet. I think it's been fun to watch, attending events and watching it happen and seeing where it occurs. But I love all of it. And I think it's capturing the imagination of younger fans, as is proper usage of the smartphone. The opportunity for, like my daughter, who did not give a flying toot about baseball up until 21, when I did a half season with the Angels, helping them out, jumping back into doing big league ball for a bit. She fell in love with it. She's the accountant. She gets the numbers. She uses her phone. She understands tech. This is a different generation. So I think baseball has done well in that area. Baseball has always led in that area. Without baseball and its tech, there wouldn't be streaming. We wouldn't be doing this. They didn't invent this, but baseball was the first to really have the courage to stream and to own that technology, which they sold off later on. So good for them. I mean, MLB TV was doing all this stuff long before. So I love all of it. I really think all of it should be in play. New technology, realignment, none of it scares me. I have a dad who won 324 games. You're not going to hear me talk about there's no value in a win, because there was when he played.
Yeah.
Right? 324 meant everything. But I'm also unafraid to look at his strikeout total. I'm also unafraid to look at what his WAR is amongst the greatest players that ever played. So I'm all in with all of it. I think continue to evolve, like Billy Beane said, evolve or die.
That's
and I think baseball doesn't want to die.
Yeah, adapt or die is a great rule to have. So let's talk about perfect game. What's your mission? What direction are you guys headed? I think you've had 113 is what I've read, maybe more now, but 113 Major League Baseball alumni since 2003, which is a crazy number. And I think an even better number is $1 million in funds raised for cancer research. So what's your mission? And obviously it's not just about baseball if you're doing all that other stuff. What's the mission and what direction are you trying to take the organization?
Yeah, I think Perfect Game, when founded in 1995 by a scout and a coach by the name of Jerry Ford in Iowa, to allow, landlocked athletes, when the internet grew, to show their stuff and their skills to USC in Florida, basically, because they were landlocked. That's how it started. He didn't invent the concept of the showcase, but he perfected it and used the internet to do it. And many have emulated and done a great job emulating it. So that's where it started. Then what started to happen is events followed. And instead of just, showcases or combines, tournaments started. Travel baseball started to grow. Leagues that were set up in Iowa for summertime, because summertime is high school baseball. So spring leagues were set up for high schoolers. Then it started growing. Then you had an All-American game, which is our Super Bowl. If the Super Bowl, is the flagpole, everyone looks to the North Star for the NFL. Ours is the All-American Classic, played every single year with the top 60, 2026s, next year's draft class. They all gather together. A majority of them get drafted. A majority go on to college baseball. That's been going for a long, long time. I've been lucky enough to call 17 of those. So what has gone on since it started that way is youth has come into play. There are perfect game events for the more casual player. It's still travel baseball, but the edge on, and coaches, make sure you keep the edge on having fun and playing. But there is youth baseball, 7, 8, 9U. It's grown into the youth space. The athletes that are scouted still stays at a strict 13U. There are national games for 11 and 12U players. I'll be heading off after we have this conversation to do what's called our 14U Select Festival, where the Boston Red Sox play their spring training games. That's got an actual professional alumni list, and it started back in 2016. And so that's the business side. It's blown up. It is massive. There are events all over. I broadcasted earlier, about 3 weeks ago, a 15U, which is kind of a gap age because it stops at 14. Then you have those All-American seniors we're talking about on the national scene. I broadcasted a 15U event in Japan, in Sapporo, Japan, a perfect game event with 8 different countries involved, traveled across the globe, was a part of the, athletes from 8 different countries, most of them Pacific Rim countries, but inclusive of Australia. And so that kind of speaks to its growth. Millions of athletes now have played perfect game events. Hundreds of thousands of teams take part. And so it's there. It's the Mercedes-Benz part of it. Well, now the perfect game on the foundational side, which was handed off when Rick Thurman bought this group with Rob Pondra as the CEO. There was a bubbling of a real touch to the communities in which Perfect Game takes part in these events, and they wanted to take it further. So they're growing. The Believe in Baseball Foundation has started to take the vision that was started earlier and take it forward and make it larger. And so that million you've talked about, I hope, is 5 million within 3 years.
It's awesome.
Every single major event, there'll be a Golisano's Children's Hospital in Fort Myers, in Lee County. The young 14U athletes will go over there. They fundraise as best they can. But then PG's matching. They're stepping up and writing big checks. The All-American Classic is Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego. But then with the Believe in Baseball Foundation, I think the key is this, and this is such a easy topic. It's such low-hanging fruit that when I say it, everyone's going to say, good, they should, is they're making sure that more and more players find baseball accessible. Scholarshiping more and more players and teams. And as this Believe in Baseball Foundation grows back up and continues to grow in size, more awareness is made, and more people step in. A lot of major league investors have invested in Perfect Game. Alumni of the game who have played the major leagues have invested. They're giving back in coaching. They're giving back too. But as they nudge their buddies to help raise funds, those that maybe are blessed a little bit more, I think that's the other big goal of the Believe in Baseball Foundation, is to make the game more accessible. Look, Major League Baseball has done a great job with that. They really, really have. And so just fall into line and join into the efforts of the Breakthrough Series, of MLB Develops, of all the work that Tony Regans and Del Matthews have done. And beyond, as you said, reaching out to the hospitals and those children that are ill in the communities where you play your national games. Let's keep fighting to make the game more accessible so that everyone who wants to play can play.
That should be shouted from the rooftops. That's one of the biggest things that have changed since you and I played as a kid. I played for my middle middle school, right? I was Harbor Lights Middle School in Bandon, Oregon was my team, right? And it turned into, and not baseball specifically, but across sport, kind of turned into country club sports for those who could afford it, got the opportunity to get better coaching and play at a higher level. And that accessibility entry point for all of these young athletes is so critical, which is why the work you're doing in organizations like yours is so impactful to these young people and giving them this opportunity to learn all these cool things we already talked about that you can learn from sport. You don't get to learn any of them if you don't have access. No,
it's so true. And again, I think what I hear a lot, I'll go a little bit on the defensive. I think it's very easy to sit in a quiet room and talk about everything that travel sports does wrong, instead of, as someone who's within it, building content around it, just hoping that the group that I work for challenges itself to do more right.
Yeah.
I
love it.
I live in the space, I live in the space. But again, I worked in Major League Baseball when athletes would do deplorable things, and you also saw all the good that's being done. Just the other night when the aforementioned Keon Johnson came to the stage, received his award, we called his mom up, and then 400 people in the room stood, because that's what baseball is. It's a family. The world gets really small in sports, and then also in the same way in broadcasting. So those are the moments that the person who kind of shouts into an empty room and shouts it loud and uses social media to just crush travel baseball. Yeah, good challenge, travel baseball. That's fine. But there's a lot of good going on, and I agree with you. So I'll stand on the defensive just a little bit, because you hear the words cash grab for travel baseball organizations. Other businesses, they certainly are. I don't do what I do for free. I mean, I love sports, but I'm not doing it for free. Bills to pay. It's Arizona. The fan needs to work over the top. So that being said, if you're going to make money, challenge yourself. And again, and I'm hoping that we continue to grow in the area. I see more and more teams that might not have made it. I see guys like Eric Burns, who isn't one of us, former major leaguer, who has a travel ball organization that I think finished the summer ranked 7th in the nation at the 13U age group, and nobody pays. Nobody pays. And it's not that he writes a check out of his own pocket. He's just creative. He works in his community around him. So we all can do that at a grassroots level too. But it's called the Let Them Play team, and They play and nobody pays. And so there's more of that going on while still having the larger company that, has to pay umpires, has to rent the fields and, build the facilities. They've got to make money too. So it's striking that balance, which you hope they strike it. Well, I'll challenge our own company to do so, but to sit back, especially if you're involved in travel sports at any level or involved in sports at any level, understand what you're talking about if in fact you're going to be critical of it from the jump.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what your organization and organizations like yours need to be emulated, and people build models like that obviously there's a financial component to this, but having that overarching mission to serve kids while making money, you can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other, mutually exclusive of each other. You can do both.
No, you can. And I always talk about it. My bosses, they may listen to this. They know the same thing. When we have our review, I'm lucky enough to just kind of have my review with the owner and the CEO every year as one of the early people that jumped into the content space. But I just go back to trust and relationships. Why are we growing Perfect Game TV? Why are we building it? Well, we've got to have great editors, great shooters, great live producers like my friend Steve Banta, who does an amazing job. Heck, the producer of this podcast does a lot of our large events, and Jason Cardona. Look, we're good because of that, but we don't do any of it without the trust and the fostering of the relationships with the families. So I go back to that. I let them know we're doing well in that space, and onward and upward we go. And you can gain more of that if you do provide those opportunities. But again, it's always a stark reminder too of those that are new, especially in the media side, that I remind them, and you weren't going here, but I'll go there because it popped into my head.
Please do.
Is our customers, at the end of the day, our customers are our parents, but our sole focus and our clients are minors. So let's treat them as such.
Yeah.
Let's remember they are. Let's remember there's so much they don't know, and there's so much they're going to learn. So let's always treat them as fragile as they should be treated.
Yeah, I love it. So let's talk about, you obviously have an amazing track record within Perfect Game of building Major League Baseball players, right? Like I think the number's 113, maybe it's more, but you have a lot. And what are scouts watching? The evaluation process, obviously in all sports, is about measurables and how well can you hit it, how well can you shoot it, how well can you throw it, how long are your arms, like all the measurables. But what are some of the non-physical, non-tangible traits that these scouts and evaluators are looking at when kids are playing, as a reminder that there's always someone watching you, and there's more to than just your skill set that goes into reaching that level that you want to get to?
This is documented stuff I'm going to give you because I asked this question a lot. So youngsters, listen up, or parents of youngsters, listen up. And you've all heard this stuff, but they're watching you when you're not in the lineup. They're watching you when you're not playing. How do you sit on the bench? How do you handle your business then? They're watching you when you have that third strikeout in a game. Even though they came to see you play, they're going to watch how you handle it. They're watching it when you kick a ground ball at short and you clamor to throw it across. It's not in time. How do you handle that at that point? They're watching you when your pinch ran for. They're watching you when your pinch hit for. They know all that other stuff. Guess what? You and I, we can scout the obvious stuff. When a dude's a dude, you don't have to get a major league scout or a college scout. When a dude's a dude, you can get somebody off the street. You can pull them right out of the drive-thru at McDonald's, and they're going to tell you that's a dude. They're watching all those other things, and then they're watching super closely the college coaches, the junior college coaches, the NAIA coaches, the Division II coaches, the prep school that you might want to go to coaches. They are scouring your social media, and they're watching it very closely. Do you lift up teammates that maybe get scholarship offers? Are you excited for them as well? How do you handle it? And it's hard now. It's really hard now for me to go find social media that's negative. And kudos to you young athletes that are doing it, because I use it too. Guess who else is watching it? The old media guy who's about to do an MLB Network radio interview with you. That's one of the last places I go, just because I learn a little bit more. I learned that you may have a girlfriend. I learned that you went on a cruise with your parents over Christmas vacation, and that's really cool that you got to take a break from being a college baseball player to go do that. So, but all the things that we forget about, all the things where we become myopic, which it's natural. You train your butt off to be in this space. Even if you're 15 or 14, you still train and you try and you care and you watch your YouTube videos of your favorite hitter and how does he handle it. And then you embarrass yourself on the field because that's what baseball does. That's what the game does. They're watching to see what happens after that. And they're going to watch real closely. And by the way, if game 2 of that doubleheader or game 2 of that 3 travel ball games in a day, you're on the bench, they're going to watch you on the bench, especially if number 17 is on the list. How does he handle himself? Does he grab his smartphone? Is he disengaged? Does he not care? Is he not learning? Or is he ready to pinch run when the coach needs him to pinch run? And he's out there all the time. I'm going to give you an example, and this is a silly example because this guy can play, okay? He can absolutely play. And there's 2 examples, and it's happened twice. Last year, there were 2 athletes that came to Perfect Games National Showcase, which, first of all, you're good. If you get invited to the National Showcase, which is in a major league stadium, the top 300 rising seniors in the country, you're good. You're a good player. You're going to college to play. But there were 2 brothers, twin brothers, fraternal twins, born around the same time, obviously within that same hour, but looked totally different, played the game totally different. One, a little bit more advanced, a big-time slugger. Went to the Major League Baseball home run derby, was hitting in between the big stars. The other, a football player, really fast, gritty guy, came one ranked like 12 in the nation, one ranked like 400th in the nation. Both the brothers come, and both the brothers do their thing. The other shows the power. By the way, he's off to Mississippi State this year. He's going to go and play at Mississippi State. The other 400-ranked brother had a lot of hits. There were line drives here and there. He wasn't hitting it over the bleachers. Every single time that the coach or the scout, and they simulate games in these showcases, said, I need a pinch runner, that kid was on base. The number 400 ranked kid raced to first base and put his helmet on. And so it looked like, to evaluators, he had 200 hits in this event. Why is JoJo Parker on first again? What is JoJo Parker doing out there all the time? Because every single time they'd say, we need a pinch runner. We got a catcher that's got to go back in, or this guy got hit by a pitch. He still gets hit. We need a pinch runner. JoJo Parker went from 432nd in the ranking to a first-round pick this year and a millionaire. Now, that same you could think, well, I'm not going to be a first-round pick. Well, probably none of us are going to be, but it applies in life, right? 100%. It's the same thing. It's how you do anything is how you do everything, right? That's how you do the best things. And then the other one that did this at Perfect Games National Showcase many moons ago, that pinch ran every time a pinch runner was needed, is Hall of Famer, soon to be Francisco Lindor. He's known for doing that when he attended National Showcase. So I gave you a big, fat, rambling answer.
It's beautiful.
Watching everything you do, and you can change your life by just doing that one little thing, even when you don't want to. All the time we don't want to, right? In life. And the older you and I get, we don't want to all the time.
That's right.
But we hope we've got some good habits that we formed when they were the young athletes' age that we could do forward, or from our failures, even as men, that we could learn to get a little bit sharper.
Yeah, that's so good. That's the best answer that you could have possibly given right there. So, advice to parents. You can take this from being a kid, being raised in the situation you were raised in, as a player or as a broadcaster, or combine all 3 of them together. Of what advice do you give to parents who have kids that are anywhere on this spectrum, going through the journey of how to show up, how to mentor their kids, how to be involved positively in that experience as they go through this?
Model for them as men and women. And that's easy. That's in life, right? If you're a person of faith, if you're, a person who wants to teach your kid your profession, model for them. And if you're losing your mind as a dad or a mom, if you're disconnecting from the realities that they're going through, if you're the one that they hear that's embarrassing them, what kind of modeling is that? It's no modeling at all. I'll go back to my youth, and my father was someone I looked at more on this. He was on this pedestal as a player, and I understood that. But what my father did, and I was lucky in this, but you know what? I'm going to be honest. In the world of sports and the people that are coming back around to play, and even dads that maybe, or moms that didn't play at the highest level, that are willing to put their time in, he was always there to answer questions. Now, I'm pretty lucky. That was a pretty good guy to answer questions if you're playing baseball. But if you didn't know the answer, he always put me in front of someone who could. And that was a lot.
Yeah.
Number 2, he always encouraged me to speak and write, because he spotted within me that skill set, that passion. At like 14 years old, he always encouraged me to do that. Not discouraging baseball. I think he knew the future. Let's be honest. I think he knew the future. Not discouraging. And I don't mean the broadcaster. I mean like the not good baseball player at some point. but he always would encourage me to do other things beyond baseball. Here's a guy that had the greatest work ethic within baseball that I've ever seen in my life. And I'll put it up against anyone's because he didn't have as many skills as most of his peers. And now what I see more that's more impactful with these young athletes is kind of the same thing. I hear stories about dads and moms that take time in the cage with their sons and their daughters, but that are also encouraging a well-rounded life, that are also encouraging other sports if they want to play other sports, that are also encouraging them to pause. I interviewed a young athlete that's going off to the University of Oklahoma to play both basketball and baseball as a freshman. Unheard of. And he was boarding a plane at SFO, took a few minutes to do the interview because he's going on a 1 week vacation where he's going to put his smartphone in his drawer. He's going to go out on a run on occasion, but he's going to love on his family and he's going to spend time with his family. No bat, no ball, no hoop. None of that stuff is going with him on vacation. So the successful elite athletes that I have met, it's never the dad that pushed too hard to the breaking point. Again, my father had standards of work ethic, though. Like if you're going to do it and we're going to pay for it, you're going to work hard. I remember him walking me out to play soccer to sign up. I don't know, maybe junior high age. I'm sure we have some junior high parents listening to this.
Totally.
And back then, I don't even think it cost anything, or maybe a few bucks for an AYSO shirt. And I asked him. We got literally to the table. He's like, "So this is exciting." He's like, "Yeah, this sounds great." We're in the car going home. I was not playing soccer because he knew that like it wasn't his dream, and he certainly wasn't going to nudge me into it.
Yeah.
And my heart wasn't there. The only standard my dad had was work ethic. If you're going to do it, work hard. He also had these same standards while I was playing sports. Is you've got to have a job. Like you've got to have a job. And I know that sounds unrealistic. And I know that sounds crazy in today's world where there's 75 practices a week. But I'm sorry, if you told your travel coach that my 16-year-old son will be there for 75% of them, because on Sunday we do church, we'll find a service that works with the game, or Saturday night we do church, and my son does 15 hours a week at a job. So you got to work with me here. And I know it sounds crazy and really old-fashioned, but I love interviewing kids, and it's not that uncommon where I go to like a junior national or a national showcase, and I learn about a kid that has a part-time job. I learn about a kid that's managed to put the values of his family equally as important as playing the game itself. And those kids are pretty darn well-rounded and succeeding. So
yeah,
I don't know if there's one science. The obvious don'ts, like the don'ts are so obvious, like none of us have to state them.
Yeah.
And then we just say, don't be that parent. I mean, like I've been ejected as a coach from a youth basketball game. I've had my embarrassing moments too. And it was, YMCA girls basketball. What are you doing, Sut? But I learned really quickly, right? I also, when my daughter was playing state level soccer and could have gone on and opted not to play college at those higher level travel sports events, to sit down by the goal and enjoy her efforts and be quiet. And I had those one or two deplorable moments. I had them, and then that was it. And I learned from them. So,
yeah, and I think it's so important. Just what you said about that club coach. If your kid's going to work and has some faith obligations that they're committed to, and then your coach won't work with you, that's probably the red flag that it's not the right organization for you to be a part of. And don't be that parent. You don't have to say what that parent is. And I get it. It's hard. It is so hard to do, but trying to model that behavior that you want in your kid, as you already mentioned, modeling is critical to their development.
Yeah, they're going to do the same things. We all know it.
Yeah.
Like we all know they're going to do it. And if it's constant when they hop in the car, and if it's constant, coach bash and coach wrong and coach wrong, where do you think their minds are going to go with it? That they're going to look for an out every single time instead of, again, as someone who's been fired, and maybe a lot of people around me actually said unjustly, as I grew, I thought, what was my role in this?
Yeah.
What could I have done better to help the relationship grow better? I wasn't there right away. Don't get me wrong, even as an older adult, but we want to raise young, accountable men and women.
Yes.
Who, and when things seem unfair and a coach is out of line, you'll know it. Go play somewhere else and it'll fit in right. I hate to say it, but there's plenty of opportunities out there now. And that one coach, and I do a podcast with Jeff Petty, who founded the Canes, who's, kind of the Yankees, Dodgers, of travel baseball, if you will. It's more of a national organization. And I think he'd agree with me, which is nice. This makes me excited. Is there's plenty of choices,
That's
and
right.
if it's not the right choice, that wasn't always the case. There was kind of Jeff's level, and then but there's so many people earning a living now. So many, former major leaguers, minor leaguers, college players that have leaned into maybe building a travel team. Look around. There are tons of organizations that you can look into and have discussions. And I'll just give an example of Faith, like an East Coast Sox, which is a Mississippi-based organization, where in their case, faith is a very important part of what they do. And they do have a chapel. The Canes organization has a chapel, understanding that we are opening our eyes and not ignoring the fact that we're playing a sport which takes away from an important Saturday or Sunday, wherever your faith may take you. If faith is part of your life, we understand that there is some portion of our team, whatever that portion is, that's a part of their life. And we understand we're treading in that pretty firmly and uncomfortably. So we're going to do our best to respect it and make a space in the time. I promise you, in your city, there is a club that would do the same.
Yeah, agreed. You can find the right fit. So how do people get involved in your organization? If I'm a young baseball player, I want to get involved in your charitable foundation, where do people go to find you? How do people get to be a part of Perfect Game?
Well, first of all, I'm going to be the unabashed, promoter of our products and content. Visit on the lighter side for younger athletes, and I don't mean lighter in a negative way. I mean in a real positive way. Perfect Game's social media platforms are amazing. They're good, clean, fun, which is nice in today's world. And if you were to take our social engagements and combine them in the standings of Major League Baseball, we'd be 7th in Major League Baseball.
Holy
following.
Cow. Wow.
We would have a bigger following and engagement than 22 other Major League teams. So that's what, and I've had nothing to do with that, by the way. Our social team is amazing. We have a streaming network that's direct to consumer, to use a big people word. We go right to the baseball fan of amateur baseball, or the families or the players or the coaches or their relatives. And it's Perfect Game TV. Go get the Perfect Game TV app, put it on your smart TV, put it on your phone. We've got great live events of youth baseball. It's Little League World Series on steroids. And it's all the things that you care about, documentaries and wonderful, informative, podcasts like we're doing here. We're lucky enough. That's my space that I'm lucky enough to build. Now, for athletes out there that want to play, just visit perfectgame.org and hop in. If you want to go to a showcase and you're 13, 14, 15 years old and you're pretty good, there's regional, local showcases now. There only used to be the national. And everything comes with a cost. I understand that. But if it fits you and your family, you want to go see that. Maybe you're the best player in your high school team in a smaller high school. Let me go see where I stand. Find out. You can also reach out directly to a Perfect Game representative and say, hey, help place me on a travel team that's best in my community. You can do all that through perfectgame.org. It's kind of fun when you go on there too. There's rankings. There's player rankings, team rankings, college baseball rankings. Perfect Game softball is starting to grow. So there's player softball rankings. Just a lot of great things in our world. We're still trying to figure out how to keep it organized because it's grown so fast. I know 1995 is a long time ago, but
first world problems.
I promise you, with our newer ownership and the way we've explosively grown through the leadership of our CEO, Rob Ponger, and our ownership of Rick Thurman and a lot of the major leaguers that he brought in to invest in our company as well. It's hard to keep up with now. It's growing so fast. And I do know this. They've empowered us to tell stories. And in a world where storytelling has some value, like you do so well, they've supported us. As I said at our big banquet in San Diego before the All-American Classic, all this stuff costs money, and I understand it. So I'm very fortunate to work at a place that wants to lean in financially to amateur sports.
That's super cool. Well, Daron, I can't tell you how grateful we are that you took an hour out of your life to hang out with us today. Super informative, crazy journey. It's so cool doing these kinds of things. And it's one of the things I love about athletics so much is everybody has a different background. Everybody comes from something different and has learned very similar lessons along the way, but in a different way that can relate to different people. And yours is incredibly unique. as you look back on your life, this is something I do with all my guests, and I used to do it with my players for their future. Made them build a crystal ball for their future and made them write a 5-page paper. Is how we started this process. I promise not to make you do that. But I'd like you to go back to 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old self. Tap yourself on the shoulder. And what advice would you give yourself, knowing everything that you've been through? What would you tell yourself if you got that one opportunity to give yourself advice?
Ooh, we've learned so much. When you're 55, man, you've learned so much. I honestly, I think it would be to work smarter, towards and to balance life better. I've been drowning in young human beings that do the work-life balance, that do the time management. I drown in them, and kudos to them. I learn from them all the time. Starting at like 13, it's crazy. So I think the 10, 11, 12, I would say work smarter. Work a little bit smarter at what you do. Engage a little bit more when you're in the presence of those that are teaching you and leading you. And then I'll be blunt about it. At 20, 21, 22, I'd say be smarter.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself a little bit better.
Yeah.
You can always have fun with your friends. I never got in trouble. I never did anything. I've never touched a drug in my life, but I had a lot of fun, and I didn't eat well in college, and I didn't treat myself like probably I should have. And it's not that hard. We've learned now as we get older that you can eat steaks till the cows come home, and chicken, and what more do young men like than that kind of stuff? But maybe after the second Miller Lite, call it a night as at an older age. So it would be to work smarter when you're younger, and then be a little smarter when you're 21, 22. I don't think I would have been a major leaguer, but I look back with zero regrets, to be clear, zero regrets. But you're asking me to give advice.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have known if I could have unlocked every single thing I could have done, what I could have been as a pro baseball player. But I say that with zero regrets.
So I think you're a 49th, 50th interview here in the last 4 or 5 months since we started rolling on this. That advice is the exact advice I would give myself. Wow. It's the first work smarter. I'd probably still be coaching if I'd learned that as a young person. I just destroyed myself in how I worked, and I was dumb when I was 21, 22 years old. I'd have been a lot smarter, and you can't change it, but you can do it better now.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the best part about life, and it's part of the tapestry of who we are.
Yeah.
I can, whether it's listen more closely when I attend mass, or to pay more attention and really lean in when these young athletes are sharing their stories with me. I wouldn't change a single thing, even off the field failures and stuff. Move past regrets and turn into lessons pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, now we're really to the most important part of the show. I am a huge dad joke fan. So if you've got a dad joke for me, I'd love to hear it. If you don't have one, I'll pull my book out and I'll find one for us. But if you got one, bring it on.
You gave me plenty of time to prep, but I got lost in our conversation. So grab your book. Okay. I want to hear it.
All right. And maybe at some point in time, I can get a sponsorship from whoever wrote this book. But dad jokes, the punniest joke book ever. Okay, let's see here. Let me. All right, Daron. Have you ever heard the joke about the roof?
No.
Never mind. It's over your head.
I'm going to tell you this. Every time I would hear a dad joke, and maybe this didn't endear me with my former boss at one of those jobs I got let go from, but as a dad at that time of middle school kids, we were doing a lot of those jokes in the playground, right? I always had playground duty because as a big league announcer, you have 6 months off. Man, every time I heard a dad joke, I committed myself to bringing it on the air that night during a major league broadcast. I don't know if they loved that. I don't know if they loved it or not. I don't know if they loved it.
Maybe in the major league broadcast world, it's not good, but in the podcast world, it's fantastic.
Of course it is. No, I would argue the other. That's the only time I'll push back on the one place where I learned what I could have done better. I'm holding on to my dad jokes, especially when you're playing 320 baseball and losing 98 games. A dad joke seems appropriate on occasion.
It does. And since I went to my book, we're going to do two. Why did the rope get put in timeout?
Why?
He was very naughty.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Man.
Well, thanks again for coming on the show. This has been an absolute treat for me. I think you might have a future in the media. You've got this thing kind of worked out.
As my wife says, I never shut up. It's an easy podcast, right? Ask a question and the guy never stops. Thank you,
We'll
my
wind
friend.
him
I
up and let him
appreciate
go.
it.
Well, yeah,
I
I
appreciate it.
loved it. I think the audience is going to learn a ton from this, and hopefully people will get involved. Not that you need our help, but people listening to the show get involved in your organization, and what you're doing is an amazing thing.
Yeah, thank you, man. Believe in Baseball Foundation. That's the thing that matters. That's the one thing that matters. Even if you don't play in a single event or buy a T-shirt from the shop, the Believe in Baseball Foundation. So I appreciate that.
All right. Thanks, Daron. Have a great day, man.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Anthony Leverett's here, host of the Next Pitch podcast, and just finished up my interview with Daron Sutton. And the first thing that comes to mind is what a class act. Just a great guy and really, really, really able to articulate all of his thoughts and his points. And I think the many nuggets that we could pull from that interview, but one that I think is really important as we're out there supporting our young athletes is trying to figure out how to have more accessibility for all. And baseball has done an amazing job of growing their game, and not just growing it as a country club type sport. Yes, there's money to be made in youth sports, and yes, somebody has to pay for it. And in our model, parents are the ones that are paying for it. But figuring out a way how to get other people to invest in the community. They obviously have this amazing network of major leaguers that they can pull from and are a very large organization, but figuring out how to do that at the grassroots level to get more people involved, fundraising to get young kids engaged in sport, because it can teach so much, but if you never get access, you're never going to learn all those lessons. Find the right fit. Once you're involved in sports and you've got your foot in the door and you're part of a team, and this comes up over and over and over again. If your kid, you don't like your club because your kid's not playing, that's something that you're going to have to decide if there's a different fit for him, that he's going to play somewhere, he or she's going to play somewhere else. But if your child is being abused verbally, or some of the horrible things that go on the field, and you've heard my story before about hearing young kids at 3rd and 4th grade football being sworn at and screamed at and demeaned on a football field. It has no place in your child's life in any way, but it has no place in your child's life in athletics. Immediately find the right fit. And if, Daron talked about, if you're someone of faith and Sundays are important to you and your family, you need to have a job, have a conversation with your coaches. And if they aren't going to accept that you have other values besides that sport and you're committed to those, that club's not a fit for you. Find someone that will match your values and help you reach all your goals in everything that you're trying to do, not just the sport that you're in. And then lastly, habits. When you are playing and you have a chance to be evaluated and you're in front of all of these scouts, or you're in front of college coaches, or in a kind of an environment where you're being evaluated, we watch everything. We don't just watch when you are doing well. In fact, we wouldn't be watching you if you weren't good. We already know you're good. Coaches know you're good. That's why we're there. That's why you're part of that event. What they want to know, what we want to know, is what do you look like when you strike out? What do you look like when you throw the interception? What do you look like when your teammate sets a bad screen for you and you get trapped and turn the ball over? What is that reaction like? And remember, it's not just when evaluators are there. That evaluator is going to talk to every single person that they can talk to about you before they make a decision about whether or not they're going to bring you into their organization. And if you're only doing those things when evaluators are there and you're not doing them when they're not, and the data on you, the profile of you is that you're not a good teammate, you're not going to get where you want to go. And then parents, We're always watching you too. What kind of parent are you in the stands? How do you interact with your child? How do you interact with your coaches? And I can promise you, when a coach calls the high school coach, college coach calls the high school coach, and they say, they're that parent, or I've had some issues, you don't want to be that parent. So just remember that everything that you do is building a profile on who you are, who your kid is, and we're always watching. Speaking of watching, I hope you enjoy this show. Hope you are continuing to get value from this. And if you are, please remember the best way to get this message out is to share this with a friend. Let somebody know that you like what we're doing, and let them know that it could help them as well. We're enjoying the heck out of this, and hope you are too. Until next time, have a great day.